Hello students, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy. Today we will discuss some of the most important news articles given in the Hindu newspaper. Now before proceeding into the discussion, let's discuss the yesterday given prelims practice question. The question is, consider the following countries, right? So which of these countries share border with Egypt? The countries are Israel, Libya, Sudan, Jordan, Ethiopia. The correct answer for this question is option A. 1, 2, 3. That is Israel, Syria, Sudan shares border with Egypt. Now, if you look at the map of Egypt, Egypt is in the African continent. It is located here. So it is also bordered with Red Sea in the southeastern region and Mediterranean Sea in the north. So you can also see countries which border Egypt. Libya on the western side of Egypt, Sudan here, Red Sea, this is Sinai Peninsula, belong to Egypt, Israel, and the Mediterranean Sea. So these are the countries border with Egypt. So this is the practice question for prelims for tomorrow. The question is, consider the following statements regarding the National Tiger Conservation Authority. This question is very important because of the increasing importance for environment related questions in the preliminary examination, right? So the answer options are, it is a statutory body under Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change. It is headed by Prime Minister of India. It accords approval for declaring new tiger reserves. So select the correct answer option and comment the correct option in the comment box, right? So these are some of the important news articles for today's discussion. They are key takeaways in UN World Conference. Second, open sourcing of seeds. Third, government introduces aquaculture bill in Lok Sabha. Fourth, a lumpy skin disease led to stagnation in milk production by says center. International Financial Corporation says to stop funding new coal-related infrastructure projects. National Payments Corporation of India's new circular on levy of charges. So let's discuss the first news article for today. This news article is regarding the recent UN World Water Conference, right? And in this conference, issues like conservation, sustainable usage of water is discussed. So let's discuss this news article in a comprehensive manner, right? So this article says that recently the World Water Conference was convened by United Nations, right? United Nations convened a water conference, World Water Conference. So this was the first UN conference on fresh water in almost 50 years. Right? So it the water conference held in the context of recent environmental issues. We already know there are several environmental issues which are uh, which are emerging as a serious threats to the existence and the survival. So they are flooding, drought, severity of climate change, and looming food crisis. These are some of the emerging climate related challenges, right? How a looming food crisis has been emerging due to drought and erratic rainfall conditions. Farmers are unable to produce enough food grains, and frequent drought led to lower irrigation of agriculture fields, right? And crops are not resistant to drought, they are not tolerant to drought. So that led to the looming food crisis over a period of time. So there have been suggestions to shift towards drought resistant crops or climate change resilient crops like pulses, cereals, right? So in this context, so the conference also marked a midterm review of the Water Action Decade 2018 and 2028, right? So there was a Water Action Decade declared in 2018, so up to 2028. So this Water Action Decade 2018 to 2028 is to advance the agenda of energizing existing programs and projects. Different countries have a different set of programs and projects for the objective of water conservation. This is to further energize the existing programs and policies. See, Sustainable Development Goal number 6, especially this goal envisages sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So this goal envisages that a sustainable management of water. This should be achieved by 2030. The central outcome of UN Water Conference was International Water Action Agenda. All countries have agreed to adopt an international water action agenda, to which governments, different governments, multilateral institutions, businesses, non-governmental organizations, they have submitted 670 commitments total. This is to ensure water security issues or to address the water security issues. 670 commitments have been submitted by different stakeholders. This is the final outcome of the summit. However, these 670 commitments were announced as part of Water Action Agenda, but they are voluntary in nature and they are legally non-binding, right? So they are legally non-binding. Legally non-binding does mean that countries, according to their capacity, they announce commitments. So according to their existing capabilities, they try to uh, fulfill, achieve their set voluntary targets or objectives. So therefore, the Water Action Agenda is voluntary and legally binding. So see, the voluntary commitments are expected to inspire a collective political will, because if it made obligatory and legally binding, several countries may not be able to part of it, because the considering the costs involved in legally binding agreements. However, if an agreement, if a uh, if an agenda is legally binding or it has a voluntary commitments, then it would inspire the collective political will of all the members. So poor finances and poor water services are some of the challenge, and that will be addressed by the collective political will of all the member nations. So the commitments made at the conference, so the commitments, we already know that 670 commitments were made. So the commitments made at the conference should be scrutinized, right? So they should be regularly scrutinized, so that whether they will yield universal, safe, affordable, equitable access to water that is inconsistent with the sustainable development goal. For example, if these commitments are not scrutinized, we will not have enough data whether the set commitments are yielding results or not, whether the committed governments doing something, putting the actual commitments into action. So the article suggesting that there should be a regular scrutiny, right? There should be a regular scrutiny of the set commitments, so that uh, it will be inconsistent with sustainable development goal number 6. And we all know that sustainable development goals should be achieved by 2030, all the sustainable developments. But this Sustainable Development Goal number 6, in order to achieve it by 2030, required 114 billion US dollar per year. So this much of expenditure is required to achieve this Sustainable Development Goal 6. So investments of this range would require uh, valuing water, which in turn require robust water measurement and accounting. So such investment in such a scale require every nation, every stakeholder valuing water, and also a robust water measurement and accounting systems should be in place, so that the water management should be uh, should take should take place in a more effective and sustainable manner. And there are serious limitations in our knowledge about the volume, flux, and quality of water in lakes, rivers, because we do not have adequate data, adequate information. If we have data, that leads to the data driven decision making process, and that also leads to effective policies uh, at the actual ground level. So therefore the article is saying that there are serious limitations in our knowledge about the volume and the flux, the quality of water in lakes, rivers, and aquifers. And also, there are huge gaps in usage of data. Earlier, we have discussed there is a lack of data, but within data also there are huge gaps within the usage of data. Now, you know what is a metering of water? So, metering of water is uh, every consumer should fix a meter, so that uh, the meter could calculate or could account the usage of water by each consumer, so that effective pricing should be put in place on the water usages. So in a way this reduces uh, illegal extraction or excessive exploitation of water resources. This is what metering of water. And but metering of water triggered a resistance from India to Ireland, from different parts of the world. It triggered a resistance because uh, it is about the equitable access and affordability of water services. We have discussed what is metering of water. So, in the case of metering of water, not all the sections all the sections of a society cannot afford paying price for water they consume. So therefore, it results in equitability issues. So that's why it faces resistance from different parts of the world. However, uh, the funding from regional, national, international sources prioritizes new water infrastructure rather than maintaining or managing the existing water resource structures. So all the funding focuses on creation of new water structures, but neglecting the old water structures, they are very critical, right? And even the global environment facility, this is the only international mechanism, so uh, that has been funding more than 300 watersheds. So please remember the Global Environment Facility. Only this organization has been providing funding to 300 watersheds and their maintenance and management. And this funding mechanism also covers greater number of aquifers across the political boundaries, different countries. And it has been providing concessional loans for the maintenance and management of aquifers and more than 300 watersheds. So, the conference has taken place, and there are different issues regarding water conservation, and every country have discussed those issues. They have put forward the commitments also, and funding issues were also extensively discussed. But what was the role of India in this conference? You can see India at the UN Water Conference. So India's commitments at the conference, what were the India's commitments at the conference? So investment of 240 billion in water sector and efforts to restore groundwater level. So India pledged that there will be an investment of 240 billion in achieving the Sustainable Development Goal 6, and there will be efforts to restore the groundwater level. You know, India is one of the uh, top water stressed countries. More than 40% of India's population facing the severe water crisis, according to the reports by agencies like Niti Aayog. Right. So in 2021, CAG report says, the Comptroller and Auditor General report says that groundwater extraction increased from 58% to 63%. This is Comptroller and Auditor General report. So this report says the water extraction has increased from 58% to 63% in between 2004 to 2017. So this will further exacerbate, this will further uh, increase in the context of climate change and intermittent rainfall. Because of climate change, uh, there has been an erratic rainfall, frequent droughts, and this reduces the capacity of groundwater recharge of aquifers. So that's why increase in water resources extraction, underground water resources extraction, would put pressure on the overall water resources, and the regions which are under water stress will further increase. This was the report from the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. So, Indian government passed a introduced a revised groundwater bill. So, this revised groundwater bill says that there will be a groundwater boards. Um, these groundwater boards will create laws for managing water allocation, and other relevant issues will be overseen by the groundwater boards. Okay, so there will be state boards also, state groundwater boards also. But the problem with these state groundwater boards, they are understaffed, they lack expertise, and they are prioritizing the socio-political conflicts over the groundwater resources. These are some of the problems at the state groundwater boards. Because of these lacunas, shortcomings, they are unable to execute the policies for the conservation of the groundwater, right? So in this backdrop, there should be efforts to tackle climate change and promote environmental sustainability, because tackling climate change and promoting environmental sustainability is one way to ensure that the water resources are uh, protected, right? There are several methods like watershed management, recharging of groundwater aquifers, and also regulation of the illegal extraction of the groundwater, and rainwater harvesting systems, which we see in Tamil Nadu. That is one of the most water stressed state in the country, and also in Rajasthan, right? So to tackle climate change and to promote environmental sustainability, states have voluntarily committed to curb greenhouse gases. In the case of India, in previous lectures also we have discussed, India announced the Panchamrit commitments at the Glasgow summit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Those commitments include net zero emission target by 2070, and 500 gigawatt uh, energy from renewable sources, 50% of the total energy from the non-fossil fuel based sources, etc. So they are all part of the Panchamrit program, the Panchamrit policy announced by Indian government. So they have undertaken voluntary commitments to curb greenhouse gases and promote sustainability in the absence of legally binding instruments. But in the case of climate change, the voluntary commitments taken place in the broader context of a binding agreements. For example, in the case of climate change, there are binding agreements like United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Kyoto Protocol, and the Paris Agreement. They are some of the legally binding conventions internationally, which provide a broader framework for countries to reduce the intensity of greenhouse gas emissions, right? So in 2023, United Nations Water Conference takes place within the context of Sustainable Development Goal 6. The Sustainable Development Goal number 6 talks about the sustainable drinking water and sanitation for all. So this summit or this conference takes place within the context of SDG 6, but it is not taken within the context of Water Convention 1997. There was a Water Convention, United Nations Water Convention in 1997, right? Because these conventions are legally binding, so they are legal instruments for the regulation of transboundary river water courses. Earlier, we have discussed uh, if any convention is legally binding on member countries, then member countries may not be part of it, considering the capacity uh, and the financial issues of those member countries. And that is also based on the top down approach rather than the bottom up approach. In the case of bottom up approach, the countries voluntarily declare their commitments, so they also do something to fulfill their respective commitments. As this article also suggested, that scrutinizing the commitments to ensure the status of the implementation of these commitments by different member parties. So voluntary commitments are becoming an important feature of environmental law, but they also raise some of the difficult issues of accountability. Because, see, in case of legally binding agreements, they have an instrument, they have a tool for accountability. Yes, because since this is legally binding, you have not met the obligations or the commitments made under a particular convention, you are accountable for this. But since uh, in the environmental law, if commitments are not legally binding and they are voluntary, they raise a difficult issues of accountability. We cannot hold countries accountable for not fulfilling their commitments, right? So commitments made by states with different formats and different content pose challenges in terms of monitoring compliance with each commitments, right? So, but voluntary commitments are perhaps just a necessary. It See, the voluntary commitments are better than inaction. If there are no voluntary commitments in place, the countries may not act to protect or sustainably use the water resources. So instead of inaction, the countries have adopted the voluntary commitments so that they can do something for the protection and sustainable use of water resources. This is also a first step moving towards uh, the more legally binding agreement, or in a way, make states or different stakeholders understand the gravity of the situation, particularly the water crisis. This is all about this news article, and this news article discussed about United Nations Water Conference, and it is under the Sustainable Development Goal number 6, and $114 billion required to completely achieve this goal by 2030, and how these commitments need to be further implemented, how they have to be scrutinized, and what was the what are India's commitments in the UN Water Conference. We have discussed all these aspects in this article. So let's move into the next news article. So this news article regarding the open sourcing of seeds. So what is an open sourcing of seeds? Open source uh, is simply accessibility of seeds to everyone, to every farmer, irrespective of intellectual property rights. Because of after the advent of WTO, World Trade Organization, even seeds and germplasm also comes under the ambit of intellectual property. So intellectual property in a way made farmers to it in fact curb or put create obstacles for farmers to access seeds. So therefore, in this article, the author suggesting that uh, we should have a open source seeds movement. Open source seeds movement, that does mean that farmers should have access to seeds irrespective of intellectual property, and that is very important for ensuring food security in different parts of the country and even world also. So let's discuss this news article also. So what is open sourcing of seeds? See, farmers earlier farmers have innovated with seeds, and they also shared seeds without any intellectual property for centuries. So earlier there were no intellectual property. Farmers have stored the seeds after harvest, and they have done some innovative techniques to improve the quality of seeds, and they also shared seeds with others, so without any intellectual property thing uh, for centuries. So intellectual property sought exclusive rights over seeds and germplasm, right? So those who hold the intellectual property uh, over seeds, those seeds cannot be used or cultivated by any other farmer. This is a kind of an obstacle, right? This article is suggesting that the emergence of global intellectual property rights regime over plant varieties, there was a dire need for open sourcing of seeds. Since the emergence of the intellectual property regime, farmers were uh, prevented to cultivate crops which are patented by the seed companies, the private seed companies. So, therefore, there is a need for open sourcing of seeds so that farmers can access seeds irrespective of whether seeds are given intellectual rights property protection or not. So there is a concept called the plant breeders rights and patents. So let's see what is a plant breeders rights and patents. So the advent of hybrid seeds, uh, the scientific plant breeding and some other factors. So for example, there is a private seed company. They have produced hybrid seeds. They are not natural seeds, but they are the hybrid seeds, and these scientific plant breeding techniques. They have used these techniques to produce seeds. So new varieties. Uh, so this once a company develop seeds with such a technology, the scientific plant breeding, or if they produce hybrid seeds, then they get the right called the plant breeders' rights or patents, because these seeds are manufactured or produced by a particular private seed manufacturing company. So they should be given patents and plant breeders' rights. Only they have rights to uh, plant breeding or seed breeding technique. And this is more so with the case of US, right? So this makes that seeds becoming more and more commercialized, and farmers have no access to seeds. So in this regime, rights holders, the private seed companies, could demand royalty on seeds and legally enforce intellectual property rights. For example, imagine a case where a particular seed is IP protected, and that seed is cultivated by a group of farmers or farmer producer organization start cultivating seeds which are already protected under the IP regime. So in this case, the rights holder, the plant breeders rights holder, we have discussed plant breeders right holders can demand a royalty from the farmer producer organization, or they can legally initiate action against the farmers over the use of the already patented seeds. So this restricts the farmers' ability to cultivate crops of their choice, right? So this also further narrowed down the choice of seeds available to farmers, and commercialization of such technology, commercialization of seeds led to the higher input costs on the part of farmers, right? So the rights holders can also restrict the unauthorized use of seeds to develop new varieties. We already discussed the plant breeders' rights holders can restrict the unauthorized use of these new varieties. In 1994, the World Trade Organization was established. So a global IPR regime was uh, emerged after the World Trade Organization was established, a regime over plant varieties. So the TRIPS agreement, trade-related aspects of intellectual property regime, required different countries to provide at least one form of intellectual property protection. For example, if it is about seeds in a particular country, then that country should extend at least one intellectual property, at least one form of intellectual property to such hybrid seeds or scientific plant breeders. This is what the WTO says. If countries not extending the uh, rights, the intellectual property rights to such hybrid seeds and scientific plant breeding seeds, then they could legally proceed. The companies could legally proceed that the country is not respecting the TRIPS agreement, the TRIPS agreement, trade related aspects of uh, intellectual property rights agreement. So these rights in the seed sector raised concerns. So the rights of the private seed manufacturing companies, the patent or the plant breeder rights have raised concerns about the freedom to innovate. It has raised concerns to freedom to innovate. So in the case of Green Revolution, so Green Revolution largely is a public led. It was spearheaded by the public sector institutions. So genetic revolution in agriculture, on the other hand, was led by the private sector. What is a genetic revolution? Genetic revolution is nothing. Uh, it is just, the private seed manufacturing companies manufacturing seeds through different technologies. This is a genetic revolution in agriculture. So, with the hope of high productivity, farmers are high productivity. Companies are also advertising that the seeds uh, made with such technologies are drought tolerant, pest tolerant, and they also give high productivity. Because of these reasons, because of these reasons, uh, this is together called as a genetic revolution in agriculture sector. This was the private sector. This was led by the private sector. So the seeds mostly availed as hybrid or protected by strong IPRs. Because of the genetic revolution in agriculture, the seeds produced by the private companies are protected by strong IPR regimes. Strong IPR regimes. Okay, so they are. How is intellectual property protected in agriculture? So, how intellectual property is protected in agriculture? So, there are two major modes of IPR protection, intellectual property rights protection in agriculture. So, the one is plant breeders' rights and patents. Earlier, we have discussed what is plant breeders' rights and patents. If private seed producing company produces seeds with technology, scientific breeding technology, which if it produces hybrid seeds, then they have given the plant breeder rights and patents. This is one form of IP protection in agriculture. Together, they restrict the farmers' rights. How they restrict the farmers' rights? Because these patents and plant breeder rights will not allow farmers to cultivate the crops which involve the hybrid seeds or the scientific plant breeder seeds. There are the companies already have patent over such crops. The freedom to develop new varieties using germplasm from IP protected varieties. So this is a kind of a restriction uh, on the part of farmers. Earlier, we also discussed high prices of genetically modified seeds and IP claims. Generally, the genetically modified seeds or seeds which have a high, strong IP protection, they are commercially have a huge price, high prices. Generally, they are not affordable for the farmers. That led to the very often state intervention. In India, this takes place during the BT cotton seeds. In the case of BT cotton seeds, due to high prices, the state intervention was taken place to reduce the prices of BT cotton seeds. So, as a public sector breeding centers or the public sector breeding of seeds declined, this space is actively occupied by the private sector. The private sector began to dominate the seed sector. So, the need for alternatives to be keenly felt. Not just the private sector, there should be an alternative also along with the private sector, so that the choice of the farmers to cultivate wide variety of crops involving seeds could be further enhanced, right? So this is when the success of open source software inspired solution. So earlier we have discussed what is an open source seed movement, accessibility uh, of seeds to the farmers is open source seed movement. Because the need for alternatives is keenly felt, uh, the success of open source software inspired solution was started. So this suggested an approach to seeds innovation based on principles of open source software. So this open source seed movement is based on the principles of open source software. So now let's just try to understand what are open source seeds. So not to patent seeds bought under the open source license. So the seeds will not be patented under the open source license. So the seeds will be available for all the farmers in different parts of the world. In US, the Open Source Seeds Initiative uh, opted to pledge based on model of sharing seeds. In India also, there's a model for open source seeds. The Center for Sustainable Agriculture, Hyderabad, developed a model that included an agreement between the Center for Sustainable Agriculture and the recipient of the germplasm. So it is trying to use this approach through three farmer producer organizations engaged in seed production, right? So I mean, the Center for Sustainable Agriculture, along with the three farmer producer organization engaged in seed production. So it is an alternative to private seed manufacturing companies, and it is based on the model, it is based on the approach of open source seed movement. Okay, so in India, and there is a legislation called Plant Variety Protection and Farmers Rights Act 2001. Under this act, so farmers can register few varieties of plants. So if they met certain conditions, right? So farmers can register few crops, and then they have the right to reuse and replant and exchange seeds. However, these whatever plants which are part of the Plant Variety Protection and Farmers Right Act cannot be used for commercial purposes. The varieties which are protected uh, under this legislation, this particular legislation, can be can be reused, can be eligible for reuse, and farmers can replant, and they can also exchange seeds. However, they cannot use seeds for the commercial purposes. So one potential application of what is the potential application of open source approach? It is uh, it is a farmland conservation, farmer led conservation and distribution systems. With the open source approach, there is no involvement of the private seed manufacturing companies. There is no provision of intellectual property, the plant breeding rights. However, this is largely a farmer led conservation and distribution of seeds. This right? So this ensures the accessibility of seeds to all the farmers, and affordability also issues will also be resolved. So this model can also be used for farmer led participatory plant breeding exercises. So in case any public uh, seed research company is involved in plant breeding exercises, then farmers could also be active stakeholders, right? So uh, farmers concerns would also be taken into consideration by these companies while undertaking any plant breeding exercises. So these open source principles can help overcome various challenges. Challenges, uh, the challenges like testing, improvisation, and adoption. So all of these will ultimately be beneficial for India's food security and climate resilience, right? So this article completely says that there should be an open source seed movement in India that reduces the intervention of the private seed manufacturing companies. There is no IP protection for seeds. Seeds are eligible for the all farmers, and this is mostly a farmer-led conservation and distribution system. This ultimately result in climate resilient agriculture and also ensure food security for our growing population. This is the objective of the open source seed movement. So now let's look into the next news article of today's discussion. So the next news article is regarding the lumpy skin disease. The lumpy skin disease. Center says that the lumpy skin disease led to stagnation in milk production, right? So in this context, let's just first understand what is a lumpy skin disease, then discuss what center says regarding the lumpy skin disease. So it is caused by an infection of cattle, so water buffalo, with pox virus, lumpy skin disease. Lumpy skin disease virus. So lumpy skin disease is caused by a virus. The name of the virus is pox virus. The pox virus causes lumpy skin disease virus. Zambia was the first country to experience an epidemic of lumpy skin disease. In 1929, the lumpy skin disease was reported in Zambia, that was an African country. right? So what are the symptoms of a lumpy skin disease? The main symptoms include fever, fluid discharge from the eyes, nose, saliva dribbling from the lips, body blisters. The animal stops eating and chewing, or eating with which which results in lower milk production. So you can see, if a cattle is infected with lumpy skin disease, how their skin will turn in with rashes, and you can see the condition of these cattle uh, because they infected with the lumpy skin disease. So how lumpy skin disease transmits? Lumpy skin disease is primarily spread between animals by biting insects, such as mosquitoes or biting flies. So this lumpy skin disease transmits through mosquitoes or biting flies. If a fly or mosquito bite a cattle, then the lumpy skin disease would transmit to the cattle. The prevention and treatment methods. Vaccination against these disease is covered under the Livestock Health and Disease Control Program in India. Please remember this program. The treatment vaccination against this disease is covered under Livestock Health and Disease Control Program of India. There are currently no particular antiviral medication available for this lumpy skin disease. No antiviral medication available for the treatment of lumpy skin disease. Only treatment available is supportive care of cattle. The supportive care does mean that looking after the cattle once it gets infected, giving a greater attention towards the needs of the cattle is the only way through which we could prevent the lumpy skin disease. However, the vaccination is provided to the cattle in case if it is affected with the lumpy skin before it's get infected with the lumpy skin disease. So this article says that uh, because cattle are infected with the lumpy skin diseases, the milk productivity would further reduces or decline. Lumpy skin disease led to stagnation in milk production. The center is foreseeing a stagnation in milk production, possibility or possibly scarcity of ghee and butter because of the lumpy skin disease. So that took over 1.89 lakh cattle recently. The cattle infected with the lumpy skin disease have died in recent past. Uh, Around 1.89 lakh cattle have died. All options, including the import of certain milk products, would be considered by the government. See, if the milk production further stagnated or further declined, the center would consider an option of importing milk and milk related products from other countries in order to maintain that the milk prices would not increase, because milk is one of the most important constituent uh, of nutrition for people. So therefore, increasing the price of milk would have a serious implications on the health of individuals, especially the children. So increase in the prices of fodder and its scarcity was another reason for the price inflation. For example, if the fodder price increases, or there has been a scarcity of fodder, then there will be a higher maintenance cost of cattle. Higher maintenance cost will increase the price of milk and milk related products. Increasing prices, that does mean that there will be a price inflation on the part of milk. So the government would intervene in this regard, and government would try to ensure the milk prices are under control so that the affordability and accessibility issues could be resolved. So the country last imported milk products in the year 2007, 2011. So in 2011, the country had last imported milk products. Normally, milk production is growing at a 6% per year. Milk production growing 6% per year. But this year, due to lumpy skin disease or the less availability or scarcity of the fodder, there will be a stagnant uh, or just 1 or 2% increase in the milk production. So this is data given by the cooperative sector. However, the demand for milk, however, has been grown at 8% to 10%. Demand was surpassed during the COVID-19 lockdowns. The milk demand has been growing at a 8% to 10% per year. On the other hand, the growth of milk is just 6%. But this year, due to the lumpy skin disease, the milk production either stagnant or just it is just 1% or 2% growth in overall milk production. If prices increases further, the government consider the option of importing milk products, so that the government could be able to stabilize the prices of milk. So this is all about the lumpy skin disease. Now let's look into the another news article. Government introduces government introduces low aquaculture bill in the Lok Sabha. Right. So let's look into the provisions of the aquaculture bill, which is introduced by the government in the Lok Sabha. The government introduced the Coastal Aquaculture Authority Amendment Bill in 2023. Remember, bill uh, is just a draft uh, introduced in the either house of the Lok Sabha. Once the bill is duly passed by both houses of the parliament and then given by the and then president uh, gives his assent, only then it becomes a legislation, a full-fledged legislation. Till then, it is called as a bill, the Coastal Aquaculture Authority Amendment Bill 2023. So the bill which was introduced by Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying Minister. So uh, the government introduced this bill, Coastal Aquaculture Authority Amendment Bill. So some of the provisions of the bill include it seeks to decriminalize certain offences listed under earlier 2005 Act. So there was an earlier act also, the Coastal Aquaculture Authority Act 2005. In this act, there are certain offences, certain practices followed in the aquaculture sector made a criminal offense under this 2005 Coastal Aquaculture Authority Act. However, this bill provides for the decriminalization of those offenses. This is to promote the ease of doing business in India. You know, the government of India taking several steps to improve ease of doing business in India that increases the investments in the country and that led rapid economic growth and economic development, and it also provides significant or generate employment opportunities for the youth. So this bill also aimed at fine tuning the operational procedures of Coastal Aquaculture Authority. So the procedures of the Coastal Aquaculture Authority will be further fine tuned, further refined, so that the coastal um, aquaculture authority would facilitate the growth of this industry, this sector, because India is one of the top exporting country, and it has been earning a huge forex reserve through export of fishery products, and it also provides nutrition for country's population, the fish and fish related products, and it is a source of livelihood to around 5 crore population. So therefore this sector is very important for the socio economic benefit, uh, socio economic improvement uh, in the country, right? So this also promoting new forms of environment friendly coastal aquaculture, which have a potential to creating additional employment opportunities. So this bill envisages that there will be a newer forms of environment friendly coastal aquaculture, and this will have a potential of creating additional employment opportunities. The scheme also has a provision to prevent the use of antibiotics and pharmacologically active substances. In aquaculture, what happens in order to increase the size of the fish, increase the weight of the fish, and also reduce the fish cultivation season, farmers use harmful, hazardous antibiotics and pharmacologically active substances. This bill provides for the prevention of use of such antibiotics and pharmacologically active substances. So they are harmful for the human health in coastal aquaculture. They are harmful for the coastal aquaculture. If farmers use such antibiotics and pharmacologically active substances, generally Indian imports will be classified as low quality, because countries in the European Union, they have several measures in place, like sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Due to these sanitary and phytosanitary measures, in any of the aqua and marine products, they find higher levels of the herbicides or any other pharmacologically active substances. Those imports are rejected by the European Union or other countries. So therefore, the bill provided for the provision to prevent the use of excessive antibiotics in the aquaculture sector. So in this backdrop, let's look into the some of the facts related to the aquaculture sector. So transforming fisheries sector, supporting livelihoods. So creation of the government has created Department of Fisheries. So the Department of Fisheries is created to provide sustained and focused attention towards holistic development of fisheries and welfare of fish farmers. It provides requisite impetus towards economic empowerment of fisheries and fish farmers. So major schemes and programs: a centrally sponsored scheme, a Blue Revolution. So with a financial outlay of 3,000 crore started. So Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Fund is also started, is also launched with a financial outlay of 7,522 crore. So the Kisan Credit Card scheme benefits are also extended to the fish farmers. This will ensure fish farmers to avail the short-term credit benefits. Empowerment of traditional fishermen in deep sea fishing, providing them with requisite skills and assistance for the purchase of vessels. A national policy on marine fisheries was announced in the year 2017. So there was a separate ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, the Department of Fisheries under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. A significant growth of fisheries. In India, the fish production registered a growth of 126 lakh tons in 2017-18. So with an average annual growth rate of 7.14% in last 4 years. So we have also discussed earlier that fish export earning a huge forex resource for the country. Uh, the fishery sector registered 45,106,000 crore during the financial year 2017-18, and this is 11.31% growth in the last 4 years. This is all about a new aquaculture authority amendment bill and the policy provisions within the aquaculture bill. Now let's look into the another important news article. So this news article is regarding International Financial Corporation. The International Financial Corporation is part of the World Bank Group, right? First look into this. This is a World Bank Group. A World Bank Group consists of 5 agencies. They are International Bank for Reconstruction and Development and International Development Association, International Finance Corporation, and Multilateral Guarantee Agency, and International Center Settlement of Investment Disputes. India is member of all these 4 organizations, but India is not a member of International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, right? So International Bank for Reconstruction and Development provide for loans and grants, and credit also. India is a member. And International Development Association. So it provides low or no interest loans to poor countries. So now we have to discuss about International Finance Corporation. So it provides investment, advisory, and asset management services to foster the private sector investment in least developed countries. So this is a multilateral guarantee agency offering political risk insurance and credit enhancement guarantee. So this article, so what this article says that International Financial Corporation, that is part of the World Bank Group, says that uh, stop funding new coal-related infra projects. We already know that coal is one of the major source of greenhouse gas emissions. So the International Financial Corporation is committed for the sustainable uh, financing of infrastructure projects. Since coal is major contributor of greenhouse gas emissions, the International Financial Corporation is not in favor of lending to new coal projects. So the private sector arm of the World Bank has said it will not support investments in new coal related projects. So International Financial Corporation funds banks. So International Financial Corporation, it funds banks and other financial institutions. So these financial institutions in turn lend to infrastructure and energy projects. For example, International Financial Corporation can give a loan to the State Bank of India, and State Bank of India can in turn lend to infrastructure projects and energy projects. So far, International Financial Corporation lent 5 billion to almost 88 financial institutions in India. Yeah, total 88 financial institutions. This International Financial Corporation lent 5 billion, right? So this year, 2023, uh, International Financial Corporation is taking the next step towards the alignment of Paris Agreement. So there was a Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is to combat the increasing levels of climate change and also reduce the rise in temperature well below the 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. So under which the IFC will start requiring commitment from the financial institutions. We have discussed earlier that IFC provide finances to the banks and financial institutions. Now, IFC, while lending, require a commitment from financial institutions to not to originate finance any new coal-related projects because they contribute to climate change. In 2020, the International Financial Corporation had come up with a policy to cut their exposure to coal projects by half. So by 2025, their exposure to coal projects would cut half by 2025 and zero by 2030. Okay, so it will halt investments. So in this backdrop, let's also discuss the Paris Climate Agreement. So this was an historical agreement, and also remember, this is legally binding agreement. This is legally binding agreement on the member countries. They participate in fight against climate change. Total 196 countries adopted the agreement, officially recognizing human influence on. So these 196 countries have officially recognized the human influence on the climate. India is also part of the Paris Climate Deal. So by 2020, this agreement will come into force. So if signed by 56 members, just remember, if signed by 55 members, I'm sorry, uh, covering 55% of the global emissions, then the agreement will come into force, right? And the climate neutrality by 2050. Climate neutrality means the total emissions are equal to the total capacity of the countries to remove the carbon from the atmosphere. So we need to achieve, the target is to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. So this is a balance between emissions and sinks. should be reached in the second half of the 21st century. So the clean technologies should be promoted. For example, solar, wind energy, bioenergy should be promoted. And India International Solar Alliance, founded by India, is one step in this direction. A role of forest has also been recognized. The agreement binds saving and increasing forest area in order to capture the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. The climate change. For the first time ever, the agreement defines climate loss and damage in terms of uh, damage terms, but liability and compensation are not mentioned. Any climate deal, liability and compensation are very important because historically the developed countries are responsible for the present ill effects of climate change. So the Paris climate deal should also define terms like compensation and liability. So 5 years ambitious. Every 5 years, countries shall revise their emission reduction targets and measures. Every 5 years, based on the current situation, they should revise their emission reduction targets. So rich countries, the developed countries, they are responsible for climate change, should provide $100 billion to developing countries for climate change adaptation by 2030. Okay, so these are all provisions of the Paris Climate Agreement. So International Finance Corporation, in order to implement the objectives of the Paris Climate Agreement, it is decided that it will not lend funds to the new coal projects. Okay, so let's look into the another news article. So this news article is very important for the prelims examination point of view because UPSC already asked the National Payments Corporation of India questions on National Payments Corporation of India multiple times, right? So this article is about the National Payments Corporation of India new circular on levy of charges. Earlier, the National Payments Corporation of India implements the unified payment interface, that is a seamless payment uh, through the UPI app to different bank accounts and to wallets also. So therefore, earlier the interbank transfers were not charged. They were not charged. They are free of cost. However, a recent circular by National Payments Corporation of India have made that the certain transactions are charged. So in this context, let's understand what is National Payments Corporation of India, what is the new circular says regarding this payment. So what is National Payments Corporation of India? So National Payments Corporation of India is an umbrella retail payment system in India. So its primary objective is to provide safe, secure, and efficient retail payment systems in India. Okay, so it aims to promote digital payments and financial inclusion in the country. Financial inclusion is access to the financial products. Everyone have access to financial products in a country is called as a financial inclusion. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is a scheme which provided the financial inclusion to the greater number of people in this country. So when it was established, the National Payments Corporation of India established in 2008, and the guidance and support given by the Reserve Bank of India and Indian Bank Association. So this was the question UPSC asked in 2018. So National Payments Corporation of India is formed by which of the following agencies? Ownership. This was a not-for-profit. The National Payments Corporation of India is a public sector entity, but it is not working for the profit. Okay, so it's ownership shared by consortium of major banks. Different major banks share the ownership of National Payments Corporation of India. So what are the various types of products offered by National Payments Corporation of India? So it offers a range of products and services, including unified payments interface, national electronics fund transfer, immediate payment service, and Bharat bill payment system, Rupee card, and others. These are some of the services offered by National Payments Corporation of India. So, in this regard, let's look into this article, what it says. National Payments Corporation of India's new circular on levy of charges. Recently, the National Payments Corporation of India clarified that there will be no charges for interbank to bank account based on UPI payments. National Payments Corporation of India stated that an interchange charge of 1.1 percentage has been introduced for UPI transactions for PPI instruments, prepaid payment instruments, above 2000 rupees. If a payment is made in the UPI platform from a PPI instrument, prepaid payment instrument, and the amount is more than 2000 rupees, then 1.1% interchange charge will be imposed. So, National Payments Corporation of India has permitted the PPI wallets like Amazon Pay Wallet, Paytm Pay Wallet, Phone Pay Wallet. So, those wallets are also permitted under the architecture of they are part of UPI ecosystem. They can be easily interoperable. Interoperable means a person having money in his Paytm wallet, not in a bank account but Paytm wallet, can send money to another person to his bank account, right? Not just to Paytm wallet, but to the uh, bank account. For that, the government will, the National Payments Corporation of India will charge 1.1 percentage of interchange charge. So, what are prepaid payment instruments? RBI defines prepaid payment instruments as payment instruments that facilitate buying of goods and services, including transfer of funds, financial services, remittances, against the value stored within or on the instrument. For example, Paytm is an instrument, and Paytm wallet have a 5,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees. And with this amount, anyone can transfer the money to another individual, or financial services can be, and remittances, or even he can purchase goods and services. So the PPIs are in the form of payment wallets like Paytm wallet, Amazon Pay wallet, Phone Pay wallet, etc. We have discussed, right? So as per the regulations, banks, non-banking financial companies, and the PPIs, prepaid payment instruments, can issue the PPIs. Okay. So this is all for today. We have discussed the most important news articles in this session. Thank you.